Europeans don't end empires. They abscond. They flee the scene of the crime, dressed as diplomats and humanitarians. They don't sign peace. They draft policy memos, build statues to themselves, and fly out the gold while the ink is still wet. Their empires don't collapse. They shapeshift. From gunpowder to banks, from direct rule to trade law, from chains to currency. The British Empire never ended. It just changed outfits. The Union Jack came down and the World Bank moved in. Ghana gained independence in 1957, but the British retained mining contracts, rail control, and pricing power through Anglo Gold and Barclays. Jamaica left the empire in 1962, yet Elizabeth II remained head of state. The IMF arrived with austerity, and bauxite exports flowed directly into UK smelters. They lost the colonies, but kept the economies. France pulled out of Algeria in 1962, only after 1 million deaths and 132 years of occupation. But their fingerprints remained on oil rigs, phone lines, and every Western-aligned coup from Algiers to Dakar. They left Vietnam in 1954, and within a decade were back laundering torture techniques through American advisors in Saigon. They pulled out of Haiti in 1804, after losing the only successful slave revolution in modern history, but made Haiti pay 150 million francs in compensation to French slavers, with interest, paid until 1947. Belgium never ended its rule over Congo. It just removed the flag and installed Mobutu. Trained by the CIA, bankrolled by Brussels, allowed to loot the country with Western approval as long as he suppressed Pan-Africanism. When Lumumba tried to nationalize Congo's resources, Belgium assassinated him and buried him in sulfuric acid. His tooth was kept in a Belgian drawer for 60 years, like a colonial keepsake. Germany lost its colonies in 1918, but from Namibia to Togo, they never returned the land, never paid reparations, never acknowledged the genocide of the Herero and Nama people until 2021, and even then refused to legally classify it as reparations to avoid liability.
First, wait. There is a man who is regarded to be the most wisest or the wisest man who ever lived. His name was Solomon. Solomon was very wise in such a way that he would talk to ants. He would listen to the arguments of ants when humans were stepping on them. That's how wise he was, you know. So God one time asked him, "What can I do for you, my son? Do you want riches? Do you want women?" No, he said, "I don't want riches, I don't want women, I want wisdom." And because God was happy with what he chose, you know, God gave us free will. God added him more, wisdom and wealth. He was given both, you know, until he became drunk. So he said one thing which is really relevant to what we are going to share today. He said that after experiencing all the wealth and wisdom, he realized that it's vanity. It comes to pass. It's like the chasing of the wind. You never catch the wind. It's uncatchable. It's intangible. You can't hold it. You can't captivate it. And that's the wind to us, you know. Solomon adds that anything that has a beginning has an end. Yes, I'm saying that with regard to societies. I'm saying that with regard to kingdoms. In Africa, we had so many kingdoms. We had the Songhai Empire. We had the Ashanti Empire. We had the empires in South Africa, the Zulu Empire. We had some empires in East Africa, in Uganda, the Buganda Empire, you know. We also had some empires in Sudan. We also had some empires in Egypt. Egypt is the most known. We also had the Mali Empire, you know. But where are they today? These empires are all gone. It should be something that should remind you that everything is vanity. Everything comes to pass. Not everything is always here to stay. You understand? So European empires also came to pass. You know, they existed and they elapsed. Right now, we might be witnessing an empire that is going to crash. In this video, that is what we are going to discuss. We are going to have a look at this video, and then I shall come back, share with you my thoughts, where we shall also have deep, critical analysis. Let's dive in.
Europeans don't end empires. They abscond. They flee the scene of the crime, dressed as diplomats and humanitarians. They don't sign peace. They draft policy memos, build statues to themselves, and fly out the gold while the ink is still wet. Their empires don't collapse. They shapeshift. From gunpowder to banks, from direct rule to trade law, from chains to currency. The British Empire never ended. It just changed outfits. The Union Jack came down and the World Bank moved in. Ghana gained independence in 1957, but the British retained mining contracts, rail control, and pricing power through Anglo Gold and Barclays. Jamaica left the empire in 1962, yet Elizabeth II remained head of state. The IMF arrived with austerity, and bauxite exports flowed directly into UK smelters. They lost the colonies, but kept the economies. France pulled out of Algeria in 1962, only after 1 million deaths and 132 years of occupation. But their fingerprints remained on oil rigs, phone lines, and every Western-aligned coup from Algiers to Dakar. They left Vietnam in 1954, and within a decade were back laundering torture techniques through American advisors in Saigon. They pulled out of Haiti in 1804, after losing the only successful slave revolution in modern history, but made Haiti pay 150 million francs in compensation to French slavers, with interest, paid until 1947. Belgium never ended its rule over Congo. It just removed the flag and installed Mobutu. Trained by the CIA, bankrolled by Brussels, allowed to loot the country with Western approval as long as he suppressed Pan-Africanism. When Lumumba tried to nationalize Congo's resources, Belgium assassinated him and buried him in sulfuric acid. His tooth was kept in a Belgian drawer for 60 years, like a colonial keepsake. Germany lost its colonies in 1918, but from Namibia to Togo, they never returned the land, never paid reparations, never acknowledged the genocide of the Herero and Nama people until 2021, and even then refused to legally classify it as reparations to avoid liability. They maintained global industrial reach through companies like Siemens, Bayer, and Krupp, built on slave labor, eugenics, and resource extraction. Portugal held on to Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and more until the 1970s. Their retreat wasn't voluntary. It was forced by anti-colonial guerrilla warfare, economic collapse, and internal revolution. And yet, the moment they left, Portuguese companies returned under post-colonial development charters. The Netherlands withdrew from Indonesia in 1949 after killing an estimated 150,000 people during the Indonesian National Revolution, and after centuries of controlling the spice trade through VOC monopoly capitalism, military force, and scorched earth famine policy. Spain ended its colonial presence in Latin America in the early 1800s, only after centuries of extermination, forced conversion, silver theft, and biological warfare. Yet even today, the monarchy celebrates its exploration legacy, while the church still holds wealth stolen from the Quechua, Nahua, and Mapuche civilizations. Even in collapse, they never gave back. They never apologized. They simply changed forms. The East India Trading Company was replaced by Shell, Unilever, and GlaxoSmithKline. Colonial governors became ambassadors. Viceroys became trade attaches. Military occupation became development aid. Cultural suppression became curricular standardization. White supremacy became secular modernity. The Sykes-Picot Agreement redrew the Middle East in 1916 like a butcher with a ruler, splitting the Levant into British and French zones, leading to a century of war, puppet regimes, border violence, and economic division. When the Ottoman Empire fell, Europe didn't stabilize it. They partitioned it. Palestine was handed to Britain. Iraq was fabricated. Syria and Lebanon became French territories. Today's chaos was built with a fountain pen at Versailles. When they left Kenya in the 1960s, the British ran mass detention camps, tortured Mau Mau fighters with castration and electric shock, and then classified over 300 boxes of colonial records, only declassifying them in 2011 after a lawsuit. They paid reparations to a handful of survivors, but kept the colonial legal codes in place. When they freed the Caribbean, they left behind monarchs, privatized sugar, and educational systems that taught about Shakespeare, but nothing about Toussaint Louverture. The Queen remained on the currency, while the people lived on IMF rations. The Commonwealth is not post-colonial. It's neo-colonial nostalgia, a club for ex-colonizers and still colonized nations to pretend empire is culture. Europe doesn't end empires. It launders them. Through museums, through curriculum, through development banks, through security agreements, through non-profits, through international law written in imperial languages. When you demand justice, they offer heritage. When you demand reparations, they offer trade deals. When you demand return of land, they say look forward, not back. But their wealth looks backward every single day to the centuries of plunder that built the banks, the borders, the universities, the crowns. Empires are not gone. They're just wearing different uniforms. Cope.
250 years is the estimated time on how long an empire survives. Do you want to know how long America's at? 248. We are watching in real time the downfall of the United States of America, and we don't even realize it. We talking about upholding democracy this, upholding democracy that. They said the exact same thing in Rome, and then Rome burned. They said that with the Greeks. They said that with a lot of these great empires, but they all fell. And they all fell because of a common theme. They fell because they did not respect the common people that made their nation great in the first place. They forgot who they were. They forgot to give respect where respect is due. You see the audacity of these CEOs talking about, oh, the people, they don't want to work anymore. They don't want to work anymore. Meanwhile, the environment in which they're trying to have us work is deteriorating our mental health. People are offing themselves because they can't feed their families, because they can't even, y'all know. I don't have to list all the issues of what the American people are going through. So as we're witnessing this, mind you, this is biblical. Read Daniel. The dream that he had with the statues and all the different segments. America is what is predicted on that statue. Y'all really upholding America? You think that this is that Christian country that America's going, that God gonna come for? Where did y'all get that from? Where did y'all get that from? That is not from God. Because according to the Bible, America is not that nation. I don't know where y'all got that from. If that means in 2 years, something great is going to happen to the point where this so-called great nation is going to be taken down on its heels, on its knees, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I know what comes with that. People who knew and saw this in foresight, looking past history, people who saw that their country was going through that, they already knew. They left. They were the ones to survive and witness from afar their so-called great nation fall. I'm not too keen on being here for that. for any of that shit that y'all got thinking that y'all got going on. Because I know that the downfall of the United States of America, go read on how Rome and Greece fell. Read that history. Read how violent that shit was. Mind you, that was a long time ago. They didn't have the same technologies nor the same type of mindsets that we have today. So imagine the kind of weaponry that we have today, the mindsets that we have going on at the same time, and then this so-called melting pot. It's going to be a gumbo. We all going to be cooking up in that motherfucking pot.
So guys, after clearly watching this video, I can relate to it so much because I'm a black person, I'm a Kenyan. This gentleman just explained how much atrocities have been done to Africa and to many other colonies that were colonized by these Western powers, you know. This is the point where we come and fully realize what was always being said by Dr. Arikana Chihombori Kwao about the consequences and the effects of the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference was a meeting of looting, you know, a meeting of organizing a schematic method of looting Africans without they themselves shedding blood in the African soil, which would make the white people look inferior and look as people who are weak in the eyes of the Africans. So they had to go all the way back to Berlin, Germany, have a conference, organize their looting strategy. But what now? Africans and other societies are still facing the consequences of the Berlin Conference, even though colonization has ended. You know, we can say colonization has ended, but not fully. We still experience some bits. We still experience a modern or a colonization that has evolved into something big, into something even more lethal. You know, colonization might have ended, but now what we have today is neo-colonization or post-colonialism. You know, neo-colonization is somehow kind of different from post-colonialism. Post-colonialism is the aspect of daily lives or the aspect after colonialism happened. You know, with that we'll have to look at before colonialism, pre-colonialism, colonialism, and post-colonialism. That's not the case. However, I want us to blend post-colonialism, the age after colonialism, with neo-colonialism. What the Europeans call post-colonialism is what we call neo-colonialism. It's not relative, it's the same thing, you know. Take a look at the countries such as Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. My three favorite African countries. Yeah, Ibrahim Traore, being the head of Burkina Faso, has been making great improvement and great impact to the lives of the Africans living in Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso was plagued by France when France decided that they were going to have mining rights, they were going to have some rights to natural resources belonging to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso in itself is blessed with natural resources, but the average Burkinabe is suffering, while that average person in Germany, or rather in France, in Paris, for instance, is enjoying that which the person in Burkinabe has to be enjoying. For instance, a child in Burkina Faso might be missing to go to school because of bad roads, but a child in France is going to school because of good roads, and these good roads, the mineral used to build that good road has been taken from Burkina Faso. A better example is the one which we get in Niger. Uranium is being mined in Niger. Now, there's a special process of attaining electricity from minerals, a special kind of mineral which we call uranium. Uranium itself is an unstable isotope. An unstable isotope is one which disintegrates itself because it's too heavy and we don't have an equal balance between the proton and the electron number within it. So it makes it to become unstable, and then it splits. Now, what happens is that an atom itself, a little bit of science, an atom itself is the building blocks of all matter, you know. An atom itself is the smallest indivisible particle of an element that cannot be split further. But those atoms of unstable elements, such as uranium, are so heavy that they split. When they split, they transform themselves into other atoms because now they have different electrical configuration of the electrons and the protons. So different elements are made because they have different configuration between the electron number and the proton number. Now, when this atom disintegrates, there was a wise man who was also a German, an improved German. His name was Albert Einstein. You know, he says that when you split an atom, you provide energy. And this energy is so huge and so tremendous. You know, maybe some of you have met the world's most famous equation. Binding energy in this case is equal to mass deficit times the speed of light squared in a vacuum. The speed of light is very, very huge number, you know. Light moves very fast. Now take the number of light moving, that speed, multiply it by the mass deficit. The mass deficit is the mass difference, because uranium was big and now it created some other elements, and when you put the totality in grams or the mass of these elements that have been produced after the disintegration of uranium, you find that there is a mass deficit. There is a mass that is lacking. This lacking mass, when you multiply it by that number of by the speed of light, that's how big the energy it is that is produced by uranium when they disintegrate. And sometimes it does not have to disintegrate naturally. Sometimes it is self-induced. When it is self-induced, we call this process nuclear fission. You know, fission is removing, fusion is bringing together, but there's always a mass deficit which brings energy. So there's a lot of energy in Africa, and this energy is not helping Africans. This energy is helping the white people. In France, the electricity obtained after these nucleus react does not help the African, helps those people. And this is very wrong, considering Africans are the owners of these specific minerals. Yes. Now, again, we've seen that atrocities have been made against Africans, whereby they still don't want to acknowledge their wrongdoings. They don't want to pay reparations. They still want to enjoy the fruit of colonialism, even though we are living in the modern times, and the modern times we have laws that are against colonialism and slavery. Believe me, if we didn't have these laws, slavery would still continue. Yes, believe me if I tell you so. And that is the truth, you know. So looking back at it, I can tell that Europeans have to learn better when it is an end to something. Call an end, call a spade a spade. You've eaten enough, it's time to get satisfied and say thank you. Say thank you to the Africans and say thank you for the looting you've done, because that's you're not taking anymore. What you took is enough. Yeah. This is EFK Original Documentaries. If you like what I do, support me on Patreon. Donate something on my Patreon. I'll so much appreciate. And thank you for all those people who have been donating on Patreon. I find value a lot in what you do. I'll see you in the next one.